Booty, 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 rocking everywhere. How does the rest of it go? Okay, we're going with that. Now that I have your attention, today we are diving into the ultimate at-home glute workout program that is science-backed. I'll break down everything. What movements grow your booty, why, how to sequence them for maximum results. You'll even get a full sample workout at the end of the video. Or better yet, you'll know how to create your own at-home glute program. Or if you are in the Greater Toronto area and you want to come train with me personally, I created a Pilates program called Hot Bun Pilates. You can come check out the whole workout with us at Hot Yoga and Pilates. We've got 2 studios, one in Mississauga, one in Oakville. Now, I'm not one of those people that was just blessed with good glutes. I do have decent genetics, but I found the harder I trained, the smaller my butt got. It took me years of trial and error and research to crack the code on glute growth. And today I'm sharing that with you. These aren't secrets if you know where to look, but I've done the work and I've put it all into one place in this video. The goal is glute hypertrophy, or in other words, growing the muscles of the butt. To grow any muscle, you need to understand its function. Muscles move your skeleton. So we need to find movements that challenge your glutes through their full range of motion. But spoiler, your glutes are not just one muscle. There are 3. You have your gluteus maximus, gluteus medius, and gluteus minimus. The glute medius and minimus sit on top and to the sides of your butt, whereas the glute maximus is what we traditionally think of as the butt. It is actually diamond shape and runs at a 40-degree angle from the fascia or connective tissue of your lower back and connects to your pelvis, wraps around on that angle, and then connects to your IT band, which is more connective tissue that runs along the side of your leg. It also connects to your femur, which is the bone in your thigh. Okay, now we know the muscles in our butt, but what movements do these muscles actually facilitate for our bodies? Your glute max is the primary facilitator of hip extension, meaning moving your torso and thigh away from each other, while your glute medius and minimus are primary drivers of hip abduction. What that is moving your leg from the midline of your body away from the midline. And lastly, there's hip rotation. There's limited data on this, but probably all 3, the glute minimus, medius, and maximus, are involved in bringing your leg from in front of your body out to the side of your body. Let's match those movement patterns to exercises now. For hip extension, which works your glute maximus, there are squat variations, deadlift variations, lunge variations, step-up variations, glute bridge and hip thruster variations, as well as kickbacks. As you can see in all of these movement patterns, our torso goes from being close to our thigh to further away from our thigh, aka hip extension. For hip abduction, to target our glute medius and minimus, we've got standing and laying leg raises, clamshells, lateral band steps, cable, and side kicks. Okay, now we have a lot of exercises to choose from that allow us to perform the movement patterns that train our butt muscles. But how do we choose between all those exercises? We need to apply some scientifically proven principles to grow muscles. Key principle number 1, train close to failure. You grow when the muscle is pushed to the edge. Studies show again and again, the closer you get to failure, the more your muscle grows. You want to get to that I can't do one more rep moment, especially on your last set. This is a meta-regression, which just means it is a study of studies where it can elucidate statistically patterns or a relationship between 2 variables. Here the researchers are asking, what is the relationship between training closer and closer to failure and muscle growth? As you can see, the closer we are to failure, the greater the muscle growth observed. Remember, it's going to hurt way before you physically can't move the weight anymore. So don't use the pain as a gauge. Actually ask yourself, can I still move this weight? The answer is yes, keep going. Key principle number 2 is progressive overload. Your muscles don't grow from what becomes easy. They grow from what challenges them consistently. So over time, as it becomes easy, you need to increase the difficulty by increasing the number of reps you do, or the number of weight you use, or the number of sets you do, or a combination of all 3 of these things. Key principle number 3 is knowing the stimulus to fatigue ratio. Fatigue is how tired you feel after an exercise. Not all exercises are created equal. Some exercises are just so much harder to do physically and mentally. So having a high stimulus exercise that produces a lot of muscle growth while being relatively low in fatigue and making you tired gives you the biggest bang for your buck. Now let's stack or rank these exercises intelligently using science. We're going to ask several questions. 1, is there scientific evidence that shows that this exercise grows muscles? We're going to prioritize those. 2, can I easily progressively overload this exercise over the span of months and years? 3, what is the stimulus to fatigue ratio? And 4, where possible, does it train a full range of motion? Okay, so if we take horizontal hip extension exercises like hip thrusts or glute bridges, these are scientifically shown to grow the glutes very well. They isolate the glutes better than something like squats. They're very safe to take to failure. They are very easy to progressively overload on a scale of months to years, and they are less fatiguing than vertical hip extension exercises, things like squats, lunges, and deadlifts. Although all of these exercises have also been shown to increase glute size, because these movements are compound movements, meaning they involve more than one muscle, these movements also grow your quads and your hamstrings. These movements are very well suited for progressive overload, but again, because you are using several muscles, they are much more fatiguing as well compared to horizontal hip extension exercises like glute bridges. Generally, they also create more soreness because the most difficult part of these movements is generally in the stretch position. And soreness is not correlated with bigger muscles in the science. In fact, if you get too sore, it can actually hamper your next session of exercises. Now, there's nothing wrong with being sore, but if you do exercises that grow your muscle and don't make you get sore, that is the best case scenario. So for pure booty growth, horizontal hip extension exercises like the hip thruster and glute bridge are better than vertical ones like the squat, lunge, and deadlift. So they're ranked number 1 so far on our list. But close second is still the squat, lunge, and deadlift. And there's a way that we can perform these movements that help bias our glutes over the other muscles involved in those movements. Remember, we want to train our glutes to failure. If the other muscles involved in the movement, for instance, if the hamstrings or quads are the reason we fail to perform the movement, then those muscles get the stimulus to grow rather than our glutes. Generally speaking, based on the science, the more stretched a muscle is under resistance or load, the bigger stimulus it gets for growth. So we want to perform deadlifts, lunges, and squats in a way that puts maximum stretch on our glute maximus, no pun intended, while limiting the amount of stretch on the other muscles involved. To do this, you're going to lean as far forward as you can while pushing your hips back to get that maximal stretch in your glutes, while limiting the knee angle that you create in your squat or your deadlift, such that your shin stays perpendicular to the ground. Then you want to think about squeezing your glutes so that your hips shoot forward and require your glutes to perform the work. If you have a chair or a box, this can help you start with box squats to ensure you get the movement pattern correct. So in our list, glute biased squats, lunges, and step-ups come ahead of traditional squats, deadlifts, and step-ups. Kickbacks come fourth on this list. They're difficult to overload after a few weeks. There isn't very much data on their ability to grow muscle, but they aren't particularly tiring, and they provide a nice change and some variety where we can accumulate more sets or volume for our glutes. So the other exercises don't get stale. I usually leave things like kickbacks for the end of the workout as a finisher. Well, what about the glute medius and minimus? Unfortunately, there are no studies I am aware of that actually directly measure muscle growth. There's only studies that show muscle activation, but we don't know if this activation translates to growth. So the following is a combination of activation data anecdotal data, but from trainers who have worked with thousands of clients and seen what does and doesn't work, as well as my own personal experience. So just like for hip extensions, there are vertical and horizontal movements, the same is true for hip abduction movements. The vertical versions are harder on the squeeze or the contraction part as we move our leg away, and they include standing banded side to side steps, lateral leg raises, standing kickouts to the side, standing kickouts 30 degrees back. Horizontal abduction movements have you lying down and abducting your leg, and they're more difficult, not at the contraction, but as your leg comes back down just before it touches the ground or the other leg. Think lying hip abductions or lying leg lifts. Both types of exercises are important to incorporate to cover our bases. There's a last category of exercises that allows us to do both hip extension, think sitting to standing, and hip abduction, moving our leg away from our body. These movements allow us to target all of the muscles in our butt at once. One example is side lying hip abductions, but as you raise your leg up, you also push your hips forward. Another is a glute bridge where you start with your knees in, and as you thrust your hips up, you move your knees out, especially against the band. Because these exercises target all the muscles in the glutes, they are one step above the traditional exercise. A glute bridge with knees coming in and out is superior to a regular glute bridge, and a lying hip abduction where you push your hips forward is superior to a traditional lying hip abduction. There's also a category of hip rotation movements, things like fire hydrants, seated hip abductions, bear plank hip abductions, and butterfly bridges. These, like the kickback, are difficult to progressively overload, but are amazing finishers to add volume or sets to your glute program. Okay, we have a rank order, but there is one last thing that you need to consider when choosing your exercises. For at-home workouts or group fitness classes, we're often constrained by the amount of weights we have available to us, as well as time. But remember, we want to train close to failure. There are intensity techniques that we can use that allow us to train close to failure with lighter weights and in less time. One paper showed that by keeping constant tension and not allowing for rest periods, they were able to elicit the same amount of glute growth with much less weight and much less time. Another intensity technique that we can use is called a drop set. This is where you go to failure with one weight and then you pick up a lighter weight or just use your body weight. Yes, your body has weight and you can use it to finish your set. This intensity technique has two advantages. One, it allows you to test your failure boundary. Most people don't know where that is and underestimate how many repetitions they can actually do. By performing a drop set, you have to go to failure. The other thing is it allows you to get the same amount of growth in less time compared to traditional resistance training sets. The last intensity technique we will talk about here is to pre-exhaust a muscle. This is when you take an exercise close to failure or to failure for a particular muscle group, and on the next exercise, that allows you to use a lighter weight while giving that muscle the same stimulus for growth. Here is a glute workout you can do from home based on everything we just learned, incorporating the best exercises, what sequence to do them in, and intensity techniques you can use to get the most out of those exercises. So for superset 1, you are going to do 3 to 4 glute bridge movements back to back without rest, holding each movement pattern for 1 minute. First movement pattern with a band around your knees, you're just going to go up and down. The second movement pattern, you are going to pulse your knees out. For the third movement pattern, you're going to pulse up. To start, add a heavy weight to your hips. And as you get through these different movement patterns, as soon as you can no longer move your glutes, drop that weight, picking up a lighter weight, or just continue on with your body weight until you make it through all 3 minutes. What this does is it also pre-exhausts your glutes before we go on to superset 2. In superset 2, we start with a lying hip abduction to target our glute medius and minimus. Then we're going to move into a vertical movement, choosing between the squat, deadlift, and lunge, but remembering to make it a glute-focused version. The third movement in superset 2 is standing side to side banded steps. Movement number 4, you're going to do another vertical movement pattern, such as a squat, deadlift, or lunge. And lastly, you are going to lie on your other side to do that lying hip abduction. That is superset number 2. You are going to do the sequence of superset 1 and 2 as follows. Superset 1, then superset 2, then superset 1 again, superset 2, finishing with superset 1. Lastly, to finish the workout, you can add a finisher like a kickback or fire hydrants, adding 2 to 4 minutes at the end. If you've made it this far, you now know how and why glute training works and how to actually build a booty at home. Let me know in the comments which glute movement hits you the hardest. See you next time and keep lifting with purpose.